It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. It is a general conference recap episode, and a couple things before we get into this episode. And I mean it, just a couple things, and I mean it pretty quick. One, it is on Thursday of this week as we record this, our 12th birthday episode. That's right. 12 years ago is when we started the Cultural Hall, and would love messages from you. Contact at theculturalhall.com, whether you have a favorite episode that you have heard in the 12 years we've been around, the almost 700 episodes, or maybe something that really frustrated you, how you found us, a unique story about sharing the show, something that I can read an email from you as part of our birthday show. I would love it if you would make that a priority soon, like today or tomorrow, because I'm going to record that episode and get that out. That will be our 12th birthday episode later this week. Also consider becoming a Patreon saint as part of that. Got some cool things in the works. One of those things in the works, and I hope I'm not jinxing that, is you will find us at the Cultural Hall on TikTok shortly. We're gonna
start doing weird, crazy dances.
Yeah, we're gonna start making trending sounds. I don't know. No, we're gonna dip our toe into the TikTok trend right in time for the United States to ban it. So that's exciting.
Gonna say just in time, man.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get on and do whatever trendy dance it is. Just to, just to drive everyone away from TikTok.
And get excited because Andrew, unbeknownst to him, is going to be the one who is in charge of our TikTok. That's Mr. Mayor, if you didn't know that was his first name. And no, he's not really going to be in charge of it. The other voice you heard is Megan. The other thing that I will say, you guys, and I only bring this up because I promised him that I would/wouldn't. This conference episode recap is actually going to be about conference. I listened to This Week in Mormons and their conference recap episode, which had nothing to do with General Conference. So I've been giving Kurt Frankum with Leading Saints and This Week in Mormons a gentle nudge. This is not the kind of ribbing that President Nelson was talking about. We'll obviously get into that. This isn't contention. It's just, throwing some shade among friends. So
I'll allow it.
We could do the ranching episode and just talk about the steak we ate last weekend.
Boo. So, general conference recap. We do this we've done this different ways. We've done it where we go section by section and said, hey, you know what? Was there anything in particular from this session that you enjoyed? Blah, blah, blah. I think what I would like to do with the three of us tonight, there will be a couple talks that we will specifically talk about, and we'll do that at the end. In the third block, we're going to have Corey, the Pharaoh K. Ward, come in, and he'll talk about all the temple announcements. So we won't do that in this first part. But we'll talk about President Nelson's talk at the end of the Sunday AM session. We'll get to that. That's one that we'll do for sure. And we'll also talk about Elder Oak's talk from the first part of the Sunday afternoon session. Those are definites, but the rest is up to my guess. Megan the Mitch Mitchell, you get to kick us off because ladies first. Which one did you want?
Is that the nickname? Megan the Mitch?
That's the name.
Is that it? That's it?
Have you not listened, Andrew?
I didn't listen to the most recent one. But I know you were searching
this is like
one.
This is like 4 episodes ago.
Oh, then I'm really bad.
Yep.
You might be behind. Yeah. Richie, you should just text him the direct link that
I'm gonna share the Cultural Hall with
Sounds
my
like
friend.
There's a whole story. Sorry about that,
Mr. Mayor. All right, Megan, where do you want to go?
All
Megan,
right, I'm gonna start off with Elder Dieter F. Uchtdorf's talk when he was I don't know what the catchy name was that they came up with for this talk yet, but he was talking all about families and parenting and children and raising children. And as a mom of 6, that was quite meaningful to me. My favorite part, actually pulled this quote from, I found it on social media, but it says, sorry, let me find it. My phone. Okay, there it is. Just as Jesus Christ is the strength of youth, Jesus Christ is also the strength of parents. Jesus Christ is also the strength of families. Now, Andrew, I don't know if you have kids.
Nope.
Richie,
I'm the one kid in this house.
The one kid. Okay. And Richie, you've delved into the parenthood a little bit, right? With the stepchild.
Oh, I fully jumped in the deep end.
You jumped in.
But have since gotten out of the pool a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's not for the faint of heart, right? No. And we have teenagers that are like almost adults.
Oof.
You know, my oldest is going to be 18 in November, which is like mind-boggling to me. But it is the best reminder for me to have, to know that Jesus Christ is exactly what I need to be able to raise these children. Right.
Tell me what you mean by that. That sounds like an odd sentence structure to me.
I know. It was one of those things where like I started saying it, not necessarily.
He's ripping on your grammar. That's
that
what he's
right.
turned into, ripping on your grammar.
He wouldn't be wrong. But I need the atonement in my life more than I need anything. Right. And one thing that I learned is that Jesus Christ is there to give me comfort in my trials. He's there to give me forgiveness for my sins, but he's also there to make up the difference. And in everything that I do, and I guarantee that on, not even on the daily basis, but on the hourly basis, I'm messing up with my kids. I'm doing something wrong. Totally unintentionally. It's because I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, I've been a parent for 17 and a half years, but I still don't know what I'm doing. And each one of my kids are different. So they all offer me a different set of challenges, and I can never get it right. So I need the power of the atonement, making up the difference in the areas where I am absolutely faltering at no fault of my own. And Jesus Christ has paid the price for all of our sins, all of our shortcomings. Those are my shortcomings, and also the shortcomings of my children. And I've had some kids who have been through the ringer in their lives. Some because of choices that they've made, and some because of choices other people have made. And sometimes it's like those rocks that Sister Johnson was talking about. They're all carrying rocks, right? And the only way to lighten that load for them is through the power of Jesus Christ, through his atoning power. And this is one way that I know on the surface, I can dive into the power of the atonement to make it easier, make it more manageable, make it more pleasant experience. But deep down in my heart, it's really hard to accept that, because I want to do it all on my own. But just having that simple thought, Jesus Christ is the strength of youth. He's the strength of parents. He's the strength of families. It spoke to my heart in such a personal way that I hope that I can become a little bit of a better mom after this. That was a little bit of a preach testimony situation. I'm not sure if that was what you're looking for, but there we are.
100%. You know, one of the things that I thought was unique about Elder Uchtdorf's talk, two things. One, no mention of airline anything, which I think that, you know, we sort of have made a parody.
I just tuned it out when there was no airline. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I stopped listening. If he wants me to pay attention, he better talk about the FAA.
That's right.
At least.
Either that, or when he mentioned The Hobbit that one time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's part one. The second part of it, and for whatever reason, my mind sort of went, and as you were recapping it and telling about it, like the idea that, like the atonement, almost, go with me here. I promise I'm going to make sense with this, but like part of like the repentance process and why we need Christ also interplays with how we are with kids. And, you know, Megan, you can probably relate to this, but there is a certain part of like how you're able to become a better parent and or make your way through things is when you go to your kids and say, hey, kid, insert whatever you did. You know what? I did this wrong, as I overreacted, underreacted, misguided you, gave you wrong advice, didn't listen to you, whatever the things are. Some of the most powerful times where we're able to be, you know, at one with our kids when we take in that atonement, you know, the at one meant, or being able to like reconcile those things. And I think that was sort of a through line through some of the other things at conference, is really being able to come to a person and say, yeah, I'm going to deal this out with Christ as well, but let me start with you. And this is what I've done. And that hearing you recap it, and also Elder Uchtdorf, my mind went there for a brief moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And kids are incredibly forgiving, right? There is so many times when
is Christ. So is Christ, Megan.
So was Christ. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. And there are There are so many times when I've gone to apologize to my child for handling something wrong or get overreacting, what have you. By the time I have humbled myself to come to them and say, I did this wrong, please forgive me, they're like, oh yeah, I already, like, it's fine, mom, or like my little 5-year-old, he's like, you mommy, gives me a big hug, and he's forgotten, what has happened. And that is a really, really good example to me, especially as we're diving into more discussions about contention and not being angry, but not being offended, and not we can all take a lot of really powerful lessons from children. And we don't do that enough. We talk about it, but we don't actually put it into play.
Yeah. Be like the children. Oh, wait, what? No.
All of this makes me think of my favorite artist. His name's Rorschach, but he always paints pictures of my parents fighting.
Boo.
I see butterflies.
I see blood. That's all I see. Blood.
Anyway,
nobody.
Great. No. Great talk by Elder Uchtdorf. I think there's a lot of parents, especially, and honestly, probably more moms than dads, who are going to lean into that and say, yes, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Because the other thing I loved about it is at the end, he talked about how we all think that we've got it, like we're struggling so much and we're doing everything wrong. And we look at the other families and they've got it just right. And he's like, no, they are having the same struggles. And I think my bet is that there's a lot of moms who are really going to appreciate Elder Uchtdorf's words.
Yeah, I like that. Take us away, Mr. Mayor.
So Elder Gong's talk about ministering was particularly poignant to me, both as something that inspired me, but also that kind of stung at me a little bit in place that I like, oh, I probably should look and maybe redo. And the one place that really stung and made me think was, he said something to the effect of, more say that they are ministering than say they are being ministered to. And then he went on to say we need to do better by not just casually texting or saying, how are you doing in the hall? We need to get to know them. And the whole talk went on, and it really stings because I write so much stuff about serving others and everything else. And it's such an important concept to me in things I write and things I do and things and the way I try to live my life. And then so when that kind of sticks out to me, I'm like, maybe I need to do a little bit better. Maybe just because someone says, yeah, I'm okay, doesn't mean I shouldn't serve them anyway. Find a way to serve them. And that the gist of that talk. And there was one quote that I really liked. He says, wherever we are in this Easter season, let us reach out and care as the Savior would, especially to those whom we are privileged by love and assignment to minister. In so doing, we may draw closer to Jesus Christ and each other, becoming more like him and the followers of Jesus Christ he would have us be. And that has been ringing in my ears ever since that did it. And that he said that the concept of ministering, I think sometimes we think of as an obligation and duty, and it is, but it should be just like an outgrowth of our faith in Jesus Christ. And that's the delta I'm trying to jump over, get to the grass. I can make the efforts, that I can make the plans, and that's the way to get started. But hopefully before I end this life, I can get to the point where it's more of second nature, and it's more of just part of my faith than it is that I have to think about it. I have to push through it. So
guilty admission around that for me. And I'm assuming Elder Gong was Saturday AM, because I didn't actually
AM.
Was it?
I think so.
Saturday AM.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the very first ones, right out of the gate.
Okay.
Stung me right in the heart.
Yeah, I was working, so I was busy being a unicorn at an Easter egg hunt. Explain that to your kids.
Pixar, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I've got them. They're coming your way, pal.
Yes.
Do you guys ever find that you do this thing where like your heart is pricked and you're like, oh man, I need to be a better neighbor. Oh, the community thing, right? And this is how bad I am about this. Is I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So then I reach out to the neighbor that I haven't reached out to for a little bit, and I'm like, hey, I want to give you a hand, or hey, I wanted to see how you're doing, or you know what? It's going to be a horrible snowstorm tomorrow. Tell you what, I'm going to take care of your walks tomorrow, whatever the thing is, right? Whatever that thing is, it's very true intention. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling, what I inappropriately have recently called the Jesus flow, where I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling Jesus flow through me. Yeah, I know that's terrible, right? That's so,
I just hate it.
yeah, but it's so like evangelical. I don't know that I can handle it, but I'm feeling the Jesus flow, and then I commit to the thing with the person, and then right before it, I'm like, why did I say I was going to do this? I don't want to do this. I've got other things that I should be doing. They don't even appreciate this. I created this out of my mind, and it's so funny because honestly, like the purest intent that I possibly could have, I have in my heart when I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go see how this person is doing. And I know they've had a rough go and I just want to take them to lunch. I mean it. And then right before I'm like, why did I
don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's the sting of Elder Gong's talk, is because when we moved from home teaching to ministering, we could always fall back on, I went and gave him a lesson, right? And even though we often weren't doing it, if I wanted to feel good, I could at least stand at someone's door, read them a scripture, and say, did it, check that box. And he's talking about what he called the higher and holier ministering. And this higher and holier simply means that we have to be creative, we have to be thinking about it, and we have to endure past, oh, I'm going to have this grand idea and it failed. Because likely, if we are doing ministering correctly, we are going to fail more times than we succeed. I think of my mom with Family Home Evening growing up, and if I look back, we tore her heart out every Monday night by just being the stupid brothers and kids, and we were awful. And yet the thing, I one time went back and told her, I'm like, Mom, that was so integral in my testimony that we did that. And yet if she was to be, why did she keep doing it? To me, I can't imagine why she kept doing it. It would appear that it wasn't successful at all. So I think there's a higher and holier way to do ministering, and sometimes that's enduring beyond our own ability to even see the success.
Well, and I wonder how many of us are also allowing ourselves to be ministered to, and allowing our families to be ministered to,
not me.
Right. And so we also need to be better about allowing people to come and, drop off the treat or whatever, but call, like, if you need a priesthood blessing, are you calling your ministering brothers for it? Doing things like that. Or I've forced my husband, every time he goes on a business trip from, I've told you, Richie, I get like severe anxiety whenever he goes out of town. And part of it is that I don't have the Melchizedek priesthood in my home when he's gone. If we needed something that only a priesthood holder could handle, he wouldn't be there. And so I'm like, you will tell our ministering brothers when you're out of town. Because I don't want there to be a big surprise if somebody gets sick and we need a priesthood blessing. I want them to be kind of on call if need be, and it like last year, my husband went on a big extended fishing trip, and I had both of these brothers checking in on me a couple of times, sending me a text, seeing me at church. Hey, how are you doing? Is everything going okay? And at first my husband was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You can just call them, or you can just text them if something comes up. I'm like, no, this is important. I want you to tell them. So I think obviously there's a lot of onus on ministers, on us as members, to be ministers to the people we're assigned to and the people we aren't. But also we need to let people in. We need to let people minister to us. That's my soapbox.
I want to ask you about this though.
One more comment real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
He made a comment, Elder Gong did, that I thought was really interesting, to make it as easy as possible for people to minister. He mentioned geography. He mentioned things like, hey, they already have a relationship. And I think sometimes that if you have a relationship with someone, that's an automatic someone you could minister to. And
Sure.
and yes, the Spirit can help us figure out who to minister to. But sometimes I think as elders quorum presidencies and Relief Society presidencies, we got to be inspired about every single one, when sometimes it's like you have to make it make sense as much as possible, and then let the Spirit tell you where you're wrong. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Two other things that I'll mention about that guy that lives across the street from me, not a member of the church, or if he was, he hasn't been in, he doesn't participate, he doesn't come to church, right? So he may be, as there is in Utah so much, someone that sort of lapsed years and decades ago, right? But I check on him every couple days, and I genuinely consider that ministering to him in the way that I feel like it should be. And there are other people in my neighborhood as well, but like when people are like, "Oh yeah, do you minister to people?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I think of that guy as one of the people whom I minister. He's just a single guy. Hey, you got food? Hey, there's a snowstorm coming. Do you need me to get you anything? Is there anything? And it's like that. The other thing that I think is curious about we as members of the church is that we're really good about, like you mentioned, Megan, about serving other people, but not about being served. And it's curious to me that we can, because I've done this 2 times in my life. One, I had it done to me. The other time I've done it. That age-old phrase where we're like, is there anything that I can do for you? And this was in my old ward, I had someone who said, I really need kitchen bags for something they were doing, right? Or they had run out, or and for whatever reason, they were not able to do that. But I said, is there anything that I can do for you? And they said, I would love 30 tall kitchen bags, the kind that you put into the thing. And I was like, taken back for a second. And then I was like, oh no, that is very specific. What a great gift you just gave me. And very quickly it determined whether or not I was in the right place of like, am I asking because I think they're actually going to give me something and or I'm willing to do it? Or am I just, doing the thing that I do, which is, can I do anything for you? Oh, great. Okay, perfect. And so then after that fact, I can't remember what it was, but I remember the moment because we looked at each other and I said, how's that for specific? But he said, is there anything that I can do for you? And I told him, hey, I need whatever the thing was. And he looked at me like, oh, yeah. And the home teacher or minister, I guess at that point, did the thing that I needed and helped out. And that was it. So I think part of that too, like you mentioned, Andrew, is the being very specific. Like, do you need help? Yes, I do. What is it? Can you connect me with some services that will help me to be able to pay my rent? Okay, maybe it's a little out of the norm. Maybe you don't know anything about it, but that is specific and helpful, whatever the thing may be. All right.
That's when you say, I know a bishop.
Yeah.
Who I can talk to, and they'll
Yeah.
get in touch with you, and you've done what you've been asked to do.
But you make that connection, right?
Yeah.
You don't just go, oh yeah, there's something. You do the thing. I think I'll talk about one of the talks that I want. Then we'll take a break. We'll come back and maybe we'll go maybe one more talk if you guys feel compelled about a particular one, and then we'll do President Nelson's, and we'll also get into Elder Oak's talk, visit about those, and then wrap it up as far as with the two of you. President Johnson's talk to me. It is the age-old story of the backpack that for some reason, maybe it was because I was paying a little closer attention because I was live tweeting that session at the Cultural Hall over on Twitter. Maybe it was, just where I was or whatever. But she talks about the backpack, right? And that each of us in our lives, because how life is, we have stones in our backpack, and we don't know what stones people have in their backpack, and it can make our burden heavy and all this stuff. And for whatever reason, this part of that story really resonated with me, and I think it's probably just where I'm at, and maybe some things like you mentioned, Andrew, kind of being pricked in my heart is it became very clear to me that some of the rocks that I keep in my backpack are things that I'm holding on to that I just need to take out. Not even that they're things like that, like sins that I need to repent or be forgiven of, not, trespasses that I've done against other people, but for some reason, maybe some part of mental health. I don't know. Actually, I'm sort of only like low level investigated this in my mind up to this point, but there are some things where I'm like, I have the ability to take that rock out, and I have not taken that stone out of my backpack, and life is harder because I have not done that. And that part of that, I mean, all of the things, right? Christ can lighten our burden, and those stones that we can't take out or that we need help being able to do. I love that part of the parable as well, that we all have our backpack and we all have our stones and we're all walking our own path, is another great part of that parable that I think that, can really resonate with people. But for whatever reason, it was the idea of, hey, dum-dum, take the rock out of your backpack. It's just making it harder. Why are you still carrying it? That really was like, ooh. Okay. I don't know that I know how exactly or why I'm not taking it out, but I definitely, had that like real clear, oh, I've got to take that out.
For me, it was understanding about my own anxiety, which would lead to some depression at times as well. And it was actually about the same time I started doing stuff with you for the Cultural Hall, and it was an interesting time. I didn't have the tools to take them out at time, but I did know exactly what the rock was. So as I explored that and as I opened it up, and I realized what it was, is that my anxiety was surrounded a lot of the things that I didn't want to address about myself. And doing counseling and other things allowed me to kind of bring them out and address them. And then those rocks just kind of over time, and as I addressed them, has started to fall away. And it was wonderful having you work with me, have me start working on this, because it gave me an outlet where I was spending a lot of time on that. It gave me something else to work on. So you can add that to your 12th birthday. It literally saved my life. By coming and working on the Cultural Hall. So kudos to you for having the spirit to say, hey, you can come in and do that. And can you do this? And can you do that? And I was willing to jump in and help. So
that's a big deal. I appreciate you sharing that. Megan?
Well, I have thoughts, but I think what Andrew said was perfect. So I don't want to sully anything that he just said, because that was pretty
solely away. So. Just tell us your thoughts. I think.
Well, I was just gonna say that I think for me, a lot of like the stones that I'm carrying around don't really have anything to do with like sin, like you were talking, like, it's not sin, it's not things I'm doing wrong. It's my priorities not being aligned where they need to be, if that makes sense. So I know about myself that I have like a serious, almost borderline addiction to my phone and like screen time. And I'm not doing anything bad on my phone, right? I'm not looking at anything nefarious. I'm not getting into arguments on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, but it's just doom scrolling. It's just scrolling through my Instagram, or scrolling through my Facebook, when I could be doing things like reading my scriptures or ministering or reading a book with my kid. Now, there's some times when some mindless scrolling I don't think is wrong. Sometimes you just need to blow off the steam by doing
Would you
something.
say I was mindlessly scrolling?
But there are times when I know that priority is not where it needs to be. That priority is totally out of whack. But it's so stupidly difficult for me to make the adjustment, and I have enough going on in my life right now that checking Facebook or Instagram or whatever repeatedly, I don't have time for it, but I still do it.
Yeah.
And I know that my life would be a jabillion times easier, and so it's like sometimes those boulder or those rocks and stones are just there because our priorities aren't where they should be. Maybe not bad or good, maybe not bad, but good, better, best kind of a situation.
Sure. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back in the second block. We're going to get into the President Nelson talk from.
By the way, Megan, that didn't sully anything. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Thank you.
It was great. We're also going to get into Elder Oaks talk, and maybe, I don't know, we'll see what everyone wants. If there's something else that bubbles up to this whole thing. I know there's at least one thing I want to talk about Saturday evening session. We'll get into that. We'll come back and do that in the second block of this here General Conference recap episode of the Cultural Hall. Here in the second block of the Cultural Hall, again, manifesting this into the world, I would love to do more with the Cultural Hall. A part-time job, a full-time job, nay? Could we even say that? I don't know. If there's someone that has some brilliant ideas, I'm not very good about crowdsourcing ideas from folks. Something that you think would be like, oh man, I would love it if the Cultural Hall would this, or we should open ourselves up to that, or I'm a very wealthy billionaire that just loves the Cultural Hall. I would love to sponsor you so you could have that as a job. I'd take that money as well. Whatever those things are.
I can tell you exactly how to do it.
Tell me.
Do more things that make you money.
Perfect. That is a
Wow.
fair point. That is helpful. Again, like Megan was saying, good, better, best. That was good. If anyone has better or best ideas, contact at theculturalhall.com.
I have an idea, Richie.
Tell me.
I have an idea. I think you should find like your top 10 interviews that you've done, which might
Okay.
be difficult in almost 700 episodes.
Sure.
And you should transcribe them
Oof.
and publish a book.
Yeah. Yeah, hard. Because I've thought about
Yeah.
that, right? Let's go tangent for a second. My friend Morgan, I think it's Pearson now. Is that her last name?
Yeah.
Morgan Jones, from All In. I mean, that's essentially what she did with her All In book was, she asked a question, how are you all in? And then she transcribed them and made it a book. Did a little bit of commentary and some writing around it, right?
What about taking it a different way with you?
Okay.
Take the top 10 interviews that have changed you and write the book about why they changed you. What was important about those 10, and make it personal, make it Richie centered.
Yeah, I don't know. I have had lots of ideas around books. I've had an idea about a movie before.
Ooh. The Cultural Hall, the movie.
Yeah. Or
lots of
like,
funeral potatoes, right?
Yeah, of course. And all of us
Obviously.
sitting on the back row, and we just keep making more room, and it just cinches. Everybody has to sit nice and tight. Hey, come in, sit tight. So I've thought about that. I've thought about something just completely. I don't know. I'm that guy that's like, that's a great idea, but is that the thing? Is that the thing? So that's the paralysis that I'm in right now. There is things. There's lots of things. I just don't know what the best thing is.
Well, we just keep throwing ideas to Richie at contact@theculturalhall.com. One of them will spark, and the
Somebody has
spirit
the
will hit.
idea.
Someone has it.
Yep.
You might be
Contact
that person.
at the
Contact at the
culturalhall.com.
Cultural Hall. Yeah. Say it
Or-
again, because I keep talking over you.
That's fine. Contact at theculturalhall.com. So Saturday evening session, the thing that I do want to bring up, and I want to be respectful on time, because we do have that temple ticker coming up in the third block where we talk about all the different locations that were announced for the temples. Short. Speculation was that the Saturday evening session is when Elder Holland was supposed to speak, and obviously with him being diagnosed, he and his wife both being diagnosed with COVID, unable to attend, unable to speak, and because of the late diagnosis, unable to film it, nor did he probably feel like doing it. But real short, like they got to that intermediate hymn, and they're like, peace out, go home. Thoughts?
Well, it
Well, it
definitely
allowed-
was that. I
Oh.
think it was.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Megan.
Well, it made it so that we weren't coming up on bedtime. So when we were done, I texted my husband and I was like, get all the kids in the car. Let's go get ice cream at Arctic Circle.
There you go.
So that was fun because, it was literally going to be like, well, session's over, bedtime for the littles,
Mhm.
So I appreciated that aspect of it. But I did like the idea that was floating around Twitter of having Elder Matthew Holland just give Elder Holland's talk. That would have been a fun
Step right
little-
in for his dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they look identical.
But
Now,
I was worried because we lost one of the, in my opinion, the trifecta of my favorite apostles, and that's Uchtdorf, Bednar, and Holland.
Okay.
And but I'll tell you, as much as I love Holland, the Spirit made up for the loss of him. So there was so many other opportunities to learn and grow from other speakers. But of course, it doesn't mean I wouldn't have loved to hear Holland speak, because he definitely. But I do. I think the time frame fits exactly right. That losing President Holland at the last minute, they didn't have a way to replace them. It's hard to say, hey, throw a general conference talk together in 24 hours.
Sure.
That's just.
I feel like President Nelson could have.
Oh, I think so.
Well, and so that was the interesting thing. I think because other people were like, heaven forbid we have a woman speak. We were a little bit light on the women in this general conference for sure. Could have used that time to be able to have a woman speak. And I think genuinely, and this will feel like it's an excuse, but I think that it to me at least, it feels like a valid excuse from a technical standpoint. They can't pull an audible like that last minute.
No, that's really tough. Yeah. I think the only
Right.
one
'Cause-
could was President Nelson. He could probably stand up and go
No,
off
no,
for
no,
20
no.
minutes.
And it's
I
not
feel like he could get
necessarily-
up and vamp.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. I think that any of them, I think any of the apostles, they have, and I don't want to say this way, but they have like a talk in their back pocket that they take on their circuit, right? That's not new to anyone. I've had it where the apostle came to my state conference or my ward even, and then I hear it at general conference and I'm like, is this deja vu, or where have I heard this part of this talk or even this whole talk before? And they do kind of do a little bit of that. I don't blame them. President Nelson, any of them could have been able to speak it. I mean, genuinely, like the technical, like we are going to have this either scripted out, probably not, but to be able to translate Spanish, okay, we can
That's a
do
good
all
point,
day.
yeah.
Italian, you bet. But some of these languages where there are so few people and the ability to do it on the fly like that, not possible.
Yeah, I agree.
Well-
I agree with that. That would be extremely tough if they could even possibly do it. I mean, you'd have to have the UN translators available to get that out for the world, and they don't. I know they don't staff them that way.
Well, and they have everything timed just to such a T between the songs and how long it'll take to walk to the pulpit. At least this is what I picture in my mind, that it's almost like a choreographed dance between the cameras and the walking and the time between and the everything that, like you said, Richie, just throwing somebody in there, that would potentially mess up a lot of things because camera angles and everything, it would be
height even of
Yeah.
the podium
of the
actually.
pulpit. Yeah.
And which
Yeah.
session they're going to put how firm a foundation in, because it's always in something.
Yeah. That and guide us, O thou great Jehovah, too.
Yep.
Notice that one. Repeat.
My favorite is how firm a foundation.
Love it.
Other things that I sort of noticed in, I think it was the last session. Boy, I'll tell you what, Elder Bednar was sure quick to the pulpit. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah, he just
No.
like I was tweeting, and I'm like in the middle of trying to wrap up the tweet from the other guy. I'm like, oh, he's already talking.
Yeah, it was like the guy said amen. He wasn't even out of spotlight, and Elder Bednar was like, let's do it. Here we go.
Boom.
The other thing, the first couple seconds, and I felt bad about this in retrospect. This was in the morning session that I tweeted, and I think it was Elder Duncan who, in the first couple moments of his speech, he was a lot of teeth and a lot of excitement, and I did the Fire Marshal Bill comparison because and I'm sure
I cringed a little on that one.
It was
I laughed and cringed.
It was a little bit of nerves, but he just gets up and he's like, and here we go, and here we're doing it, and then he calmed down. But I just was like, let me say it just was crazy.
Yeah,
I missed all of that,
I heard
but-
that, but I did cringe a little bit, but I laughed too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You got both out of me.
The comparisons were fun for me. The D. Todd Christofferson and the guy who used to sell us Encyclopedia Britannicas in the 80s.
That's right.
That was a good one.
Certain generation. Which do you guys prefer? Maybe we go Elder Oaks before we go President Nelson in no
Yeah.
respecter of persons, but entire respecter of persons order.
Yep, I think
Yeah.
so.
Elder,
That's my
Elder
vote.
Oaks. I'd love to know what you guys thought about this.
Perfect way I'm going to give my next talk. Say something and then read a bunch of scriptures and sit down, drop that mic. That's kind of what he did. He said, he talked about the teachings of Christ, and he had a little bit of his own commentary in there, but then he just read the words of Christ and he put them together in a format that told a story. You go back and read it. It was a structured talk, but he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all this out there. And I thought it's the best talk I've ever seen him give. And he's given some pretty good ones. And I'm like, the other comment that was made on Twitter though, was like, people tend to want to pull every word out of President Oaks and just like hammer everything he might say.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hard to do that on this one, since most of his
Good
talk,
luck.
if not all of it, was just words of Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
which was just awesome. So if not, President Nelson's is probably my favorite talk, but close behind it is Elder Oaks for sure.
What did you think, Megan?
So my only wish with that talk is that it had come earlier in one of the other sessions, because by the afternoon on Sunday, we have a tradition of having a gigantic brunch in between the morning and afternoon sessions
Yeah.
with a lot of carbs, and it's amazing.
Mhm.
But that's also when I start to slip into like my conference coma.
Mhm.
And so it's hard for me to pay attention. Like I need quick, witty, here, we're going to announce a bunch of temples and we're going to do this and this and this and this. So I was having a hard time paying attention to everything that Elder Oaks was saying. It's
That's
one
why
of
I
those
asked
ones.
Richie if I could tweet that session, because that's the
Nice.
session
Good
I have
call.
a hard time.
Good call, man. I love that. I probably won't be able to do that next year because you're going to call it, but or in October. But no, I wish it had come maybe on Saturday or Sunday morning, because I would have been more engaged with it. I'm excited to go back and listen to it and read it and mark it up, because I know it'll mean more to me at that point. But I do think it's an interesting tactic, a great interesting tactic to just quote the words of the Savior. And I love how when you go through on social media and the church has like Facebooked or tweeted out a direct quote from one of the talks, his is literally, "We believe in Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
That was the quote that they could pull. And it's like, make no mistake, make no bones about it. We believe in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so I liked it for a couple of reasons. If I'm being candid, I love that it isn't weaponry for people online. So many times it seems like Elder Oaks, like you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, well, I can't believe that Elder Oaks and this, and then it becomes the focus of what people say. And I'm not saying that he hasn't said some things that I'm like, oh, geez, but to be able to deliver that talk in that way, to just be like, oh yeah, no, those are the words of Christ. The other thing, I just loved its uniqueness. And I think anytime that we can bring something, even, and I'm not applying this in this situation because I thought the talk was very well crafted, but I think anytime we can present something that has been presented before in a different way, there is something that I learned because it is presented in that different way, even if it's not necessarily better or worse than had been presented previous. I just go, I'm paying attention more because I have never observed something like this. And so I really appreciated that, that part of it.
The next level of presentation could be interpretive dance.
Sure.
I used to be a dancer. I could do it.
That would be a unique thing for General Conference for sure. But not the first time that interpretive dance had been performed in the conference center. So
sounds like Megan's gonna do our wrap up next conference as an interpretive dance.
Sure, and that is
I'll come up
Megan
with
the
something.
Mitchell, Mr.
Absolutely.
Mayor.
Oh yeah, sorry.
The other thing, a particular, and maybe I'm playing into this in my mind, but we know Elder Oaks to be the next prophet of the church, should President Nelson, who didn't look like he's 98 years old at all.
Every conference, I'm expecting him to like do what President Monson did, where all of a sudden one conference he was like spry and open, and all of a sudden like, oh, something happened in the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen that yet. I thought maybe since he didn't speak on Saturday, right? Maybe we were going to see a president, and then he gets up and he's like, boom, and he's President Nelson, just like we expect. And I'm like, what? I guess it's not this conference.
Yeah. But almost a centenarian, which just sort of blows my mind. But Elder Oaks, it seemed, maybe this is just me putting things on, because he'll be the next prophet of the church. He seemed a little bit more
animated.
No, like it felt maybe more official from Elder Oaks than I've ever felt from him before.
Like
and
weighty,
maybe,
he knows that's coming, and that weight is on his shoulders.
Yeah, maybe
the mantle is
maybe
beginning to
descend
on it to him.
Yeah, it's like every time I see Elder Bednar speak, I'm like, future prophet, because just statistically speaking, that's happening.
He's like the Dick Clark of apostles, man. That guy looks like he's 45 and he's like 70.
Yeah.
Perennial. Yeah.
Have you
He got a few grays in there now, and I think he put those in there so we don't keep talking. I don't think they're real.
Yeah.
I think he did that because he was like, I gotta look like I'm aging.
And with that, Mr. Mayor, you don't know this because you live in Texas, but Elder Bednar does a countdown on New Year's Eve that is a party not to be missed. So,
Do you DJ it?
No, he does it himself.
Oh, okay. Well, so tangentially about Elder Oaks, I was at a jazz game a couple weeks ago, and he was there with his whole family.
Okay.
He and Sister Oaks, and the great thing is that he was still in his full shirt and tie and suit, you know, and the Jazz were wearing their yellow and black jerseys, and Sister Oaks was in a black dress with a bright yellow blazer. And I was like, kudos to her for leaning into the dress code. I appreciate it. And it's funny because we're season ticket holders, so I've gone to so many jazz games, and I am notorious for spotting apostles at the jazz games. And you would be hard pressed to see any of them do anything more than one of these, right? I mean, like they're
like a fist, yay.
Yeah, like not even vocalizing, right? President Oaks, I saw him standing up and clapping a couple of times, and I could see for that little old man, he was getting into it. But his wife, Kristen, she was in it. It was amazing.
She doesn't have the
so
calling.
That's my
she
tangent.
can do what she wants.
Yeah.
Right, it's true. It's true. But he got up and he was cheering, and it was a blast.
Last thing I'll say about the talks, and then let's get into President Nelson's, because I do want to give a few minutes, and then we'll wrap this sucker out. Patriarchal blessings, man.
Two talks,
but 2 talks, 3 mentions, 3.
Oh, I didn't hear the third mention.
And interesting angles
talks,
too.
Yeah.
I loved what Elder Bennett, when he was talking about his parents divorcing and then his anxiety. I had no idea he was leading into patriarchal blessings from that. It was amazing. Loved it. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I was in them.
Racked my brain any time in my life. Have there ever been a talk specifically on patriarchal blessings? And I cannot think of any. They've mentioned them for sure, but to have the first time it happened, I even said, hey, I don't think there's ever been a talk that I've heard of in my lifetime anyway, or that I would remember. It could have happened when I wasn't.
Sure.
But I thought that I could remember. And then there were 2 of them. That is unprecedented. I'll bet you there is not a general conference where there was 2 talks specifically about patriarchal blessings. I don't know, but I bet there was.
Speculate with me. What's the play here? Do you think it is the idea to have spiritual experiences with our youth? Because typically you get them as a teenager to sort of help them rely on the Lord as they go through those tumultuous teenage years and try and keep people in the church more. Is that the play? Is the play? And I don't mean.
Well,
that
I think Elder Bennett
way.
talked about that. He talked about trying as best as you can to, maybe it wasn't Elder Bennett, but I think it was, to get them when they early, before they have other spiritual experience. So this would be post baptism, maybe just barely post priesthood, but before they go to the temple, before they, but not to specifically say too young or too old either.
Yeah, because like the oldest was 90 or something like this.
Yeah.
But what's the motive? Like if we were to be those people that are like, nah, I bet the church is doing this because of this. Do we think that it's to try and keep people in the church that, like missions? That's one of the things that people have speculated why they changed the age for mission is because we're losing so many of that age of people within the church. They're more likely to stay if they serve a mission and serve for the church, because either one of a couple of things: 1, they've committed the time and have a harder time leaving, or 2, they have these genuine opportunities to feel with the Spirit and be led by the Lord, and then they have no desire to leave. Like, is there some part of that, or is it more of this? The church recently, last couple of years, has talked more about hearing him, and this is like a crank up the volume of hearing him. And go out there, and if you're 40 and don't have your patriarchal blessing, let's get this done. Like, what do you think may be the other part of this?
Well, I think if the motivation is your number one, that's a short-term Band-Aid fix that won't last, right? If it's simply to hold on to them because they're locked in, that's just going to fall away. So I think it's it's number 2. It has to be number 2. Give them spiritual experience, which leads into your second comment about that idea of hear him, and this idea that like let's have these spiritual experience. Let's because you can withstand a lot of questions and concerns and doctrinal changes and faith crisis if you have a foundational testimony built inside, not externally, right? And I think that's it. Get that testimony into their heart as much as possible, so it can withstand much more.
What do you think, Megan?
So I definitely, to echo what Mr. Mayer said, I think that has a lot to do with it. With both of my oldest girls, they're 17 and 15. It was not long after they got into Young Women's when our bishop was starting to recommend to them to get their patriarchal blessings. Specifically, my oldest, she was going through some pretty unique challenges. And he was like, maybe a patriarchal blessing would be a good idea for her. And it's interesting. Since then, like I said, she's 17 now. So she's had it for like 5 years, and she's had some unique challenges come up where I didn't even remember. And I would scan through her patriarchal blessing and be like, hey, read this. This speaks directly to what you're going through. And I think it's helping the youth have another tool in their toolbox to withstand some of the crap that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to say crap on your podcast, Richie. All right, cool. But they deal with a lot of crap, and having something else because the scriptures are an amazing tool. The words of the prophets are an amazing tool. Prayer, all of these things are an amazing tool, but a patriarchal blessing. Why are you laughing at me?
I'm not laughing at you.
Oh, is it the dog?
Mayer's dog. If you're a Patreon saint, you can see that Mr. Mayer's dog.
He has been trying to get me to give her a treat for like 20 minutes, and she's like roaming around. She's like,
sorry,
I did not. She's had way too many treats today, so
cute.
she doesn't get one.
That's all right. So anyway, the tool, we have all of these amazing tools as part of our membership in the church, as part of the gospel, but a patriarchal blessing is so uniquely personal that I almost look at it as like my most powerful tool of connecting to Heavenly Father, in learning how he feels about me, and learning how he feels about the choices that I made and have made. And I feel like that's the same for our youth. And I mean, I actually said this in a tweet that my mom passed away in 2005 at the age of 49. She was raised in a part member household, but was active for a good portion of her life. She had some portions of inactivity before I ever came around, but she passed away having never received her patriarchal blessing. And I know, as her daughter, I would have loved the opportunity to read about some of the unique qualities that Heavenly Father blessed my mother with that I maybe didn't even know about.
Sure.
I know my husband's dad does not have his patriarchal blessing. He's almost 88 years old. And my husband, every few months, he's like, hey, let's get your patriarchal blessing. And my father-in-law's like, I'm old. It doesn't matter, but
what is it going to possibly tell me? I'm about dead.
What can it possibly tell me? But I think there's so much power in knowing how our Father in heaven feels about you personally. The things that he has instilled in your character that are unique to you. I think that is such a powerful experience to have, is reading those things. So like I said, the youth go through so much crap, and it gets younger and younger and younger. So giving them those blessings a little bit younger when they're prepared to have it, I think is a great experience for them.
And I allowed crap to be said one time, Megan. You're pushing it with the 2 craps, okay?
Who's this new person, man?
Yeah,
I know,
Megan the Mitch. So watch yourself,
She's
Mr.
edgy.
Mayer.
She's edgy.
She's edgy.
She's just pushing that line.
Well, and it's funny, Mr. Mayer, I am
and...
like the least edgy person on the planet.
I didn't really think you were edgy.
So let me just say 2 things about that. One, if people don't know, and I find a lot of people don't know this, I think it's Family Search, but it might be just within the church app. You guys, one of you might know, but you can actually go and read the deceased members in your family's patriarchal blessing.
You can request them on LDS.org, and I don't remember where though. It's just LDS.
But you can just see them.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
can request them to be sent to you, but like you can also, there's some like portal that you can go to and it's just there.
Wow.
And
Somebody listening knows. So
yeah,
tell us.
yeah. Maybe Megan Oler Gordon, who does our show notes, maybe she will leave
I
that.
got
But
my dad's a few years ago. So, and I know I just did it through LDS.org and then they just sent it to me. But
yeah. Now it's available, some online portal, maybe Family Search, you can be able to see it if you're a member of the church, whatever. But being able to read my grandfather's patriarchal blessing, super cool. So that's one thing. The second thing, and this is maybe, well, let's go down this tangent for a minute. Because my patriarchal blessing was so instrumental in my life, for people who don't know, maybe this is your first episode of the Cultural Hall, or maybe you haven't been around for a while. I was excommunicated for a good long time. And when I was in my early, well, I guess late teens, almost go on a mission, I wasn't going to go on a mission. I had a girl that I was dating who, to her credit, was very much like, you need to get your patriarchal blessing and consider going on a mission. Got the patriarchal blessing, really started to put me on the like the path, the, you know, to serve a mission and really to be able to think about like God's hand in my life. Now, here's the thing. In the last year, I found out that she left the church, that she has said that this is not a thing for her. And because of either the ability that I have to be able to know and talk to a lot of people, I have talked to a lot of people that have left the church. And to say that those people haven't affected me, that's not what I mean. It hurts, you know, anytime I know that someone steps away from the church. I also respect people's agency to be able to do that and all of those things. But like, I have a tremendous amount of love for anyone who feels like they can't be in a place and needs to do something else, or wants to stay and can't, or whatever the things are, right? Tremendous amount of love, lots of charity, all of those things. But for whatever reason, hearing about this and that particular person, if I'm being candid, has been one of the like rockiest things as far as I go in the church, and that's including being excommunicated.
Wow. That's heavy.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a thing to me that I'm like, this person who instrumental in guiding me in the path of which I have walked, you know, has stepped away, and I don't know what to do with it. And I, you know, again, respect someone's agency enough and all the things. I'm not saying anything negatively or hurt. All her and I actually talked about it. I appreciated how candid she was, and she shared all the things, right? Like top notch as far as that interaction. But just the fact that it was like, huh, what do I do with that?
I'll tell you exactly what to do with it.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Tell me what to do. No, I don't know. I really don't know.
Really, I don't know. I wouldn't
don't
know
know.
what to do. That's a tough scenario. I think the only thing you can do is what you said, right? You express love and you listen, and you've done all those things and you continue to do those things. That's the only thing.
Well,
I think. Yeah.
To be clear and to clarify, like it's not a thing where I'm like, oh man, is there something I could have done, and I want to help her be back in the church. Although if she I think that the relationship is such that she knows that if ever she wanted to talk to me about the church, or wanted to come back, or I wanted to have a open and frank discussion, like I could be a person in her life that would have that type of conversation. But that's not even what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
like it is just such a personal thing where it's like, it almost, point of vulnerability real quick, it's almost like, and has been in my mind a couple of times within the last year, where I go, I wonder if I'm missing something, right? Or like, this individual whom, you know, I saw for everything that she was as far as her interaction with the church. And I don't need you guys to respond to this. I'd like to just share this and then we'll move into President Nelson's talk. But it was interesting because I'm like, the thing I've struggled about is, it's like, well, I wonder, like, am I missing something? Is this where I'll end up being eventually, and I'll understand like why this was part of it? Or, you know, all the time when people have been like, oh man, you were excommunicated and then you decided to come back. Why did you decide to come back? And I was like, oh, because I knew that was the thing. Like, is it a thing that at some point in my life I'm going to look at it and go, oh man, all these times, and then I found myself without the church. I'm not leaving. Everyone calm down. All the things. I just, for whatever reason, that particular things and with Patriarchal Blessings, I was like, it has been instrumental as far as my life goes, both in the very, very positive and some of the very, very hardest things that I've struggled with in the last little bit.
All I'll say is maybe it's not a bad thing to dynamically look at your testimony like you're doing.
Sure.
Maybe that's not a bad thing, right? And that's all I'm going to say, because there's so much you could unpack with that.
Sure.
But I think our testimony should be dynamic, which means we have to question, which means we have to look at it, which means all those things, right?
Yep.
And it's okay. It's
Sure.
not only okay, I think that's how you make it strong and keep it strong.
Yep. But it's curious to me. I don't mean to keep dredging this up, but it's curious to me that that had that much impact on me, because it's not like this this woman and I are really even friends anymore. Like, we're social media friends, and when I found out that she had left the church, I was able to talk to her a little bit, but I hadn't talked to her in almost 15 years. But a visceral sort of moment when I found out that was the case. Anyway,
Kind of a chink in the armor that you found, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the thing is. And don't try and solve my problems, everyone. I'm not sharing. I'm just sharing my problems.
Thank you for sharing, Richie.
Sometimes I have to do that when I'm chatting with my wife. I'll be like, no, this is just me saying this. Don't fix this. President Nelson, his talk in the Sunday morning session. Yeah, Megan, if you're not a Patreon saint, just dropped the mic as far as that goes. In the words of my dad, when he finished, my dad, I looked over at him, I was watching conference with him, and my dad just like mouth agape, was just like, wow. And that was it. Some people online, no words. Would one of you dare to kind of describe, for those that maybe didn't get to hear it or haven't ventured into it, what it is that he spoke about?
We need to remove all contention and anger from our lives. And the only way to do that is through Jesus Christ and living as he wants us to live. There's no place in this world, in the church, in society, for any sort of contention at all. And no uncertain terms, It was a good, hard one for me to hear. A really good, hard one.
He started early on. He said, I am greatly concerned that so many people seem to believe that it is completely acceptable to condemn, malign, and vilify anyone who does not agree with them. That sums up our day and age.
Everything.
So much. And then he went on to talk about that. If there's anything virtually lovely or a good report or praiseworthy, that we can say that about another person, whether to his face or behind his back. And that should be our standard of communication. Those concepts are what we're talking about. How we speak absolutely is, and he compared it to a weapon of war, how we speak and how we interact with each other. And then he referenced Christ when he talked to the Nephites. Contention is not of me, but is of the devil. And he spoke about being a peacemaker. So there's so much to unpack, but every single talk about the ministering, poking my heart. This was just basically reaching into my heart and just diving around with a spoon or something and just stirring it all up again. It's just it was the guy from Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
reached in, pulled it out.
Yep,
that's what he was. That's what he did. He just pulled my heart out, and that's exactly what it was. It was awesome.
Now, was it President Nelson's talk, and I hope it was, where he said, and you're probably thinking, this is the perfect talk for someone else to hear. Wasn't that him?
That was so him. That was
so him.
Awesome.
And he said, and I hope it does.
And it was so spot on, because how many people, both online, if you were, looking at some of the darts that were being thrown and the things that we're saying online, were like, man, I hope the blank group understands and sees this. And when he said that, it was very funny. It was very spot on. And also so very, in case you're missing this, that this is about you, pal, let me just say, it is about that person, and it's also about you, pal. So make sure that you aren't, just pushing this off onto someone else. It was incredible. It so was good. The thing that sort of maybe scares me about it is it seems real prophetic.
Yeah.
And seemed like real. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm not anything like that. But there have been some things, and people will point to these things in the past with General Conference, and then the months between General Conference about what occurs and what the brethren said at the last conference, and if we adhered to them, that how much better we were prepared. People said that with COVID and some other things. Like, if in fact he is the gentleman up on the watchtower for God and seeing what's coming and felt the need to be so direct and prophetic in these things. Yes, I love it. Yes, I hope to change. Man, Hadam Shabbat, my heart, and rip it out. But also, what the crap is coming that we need to be able to do this. And instantly, like, my mind thinks of things that could happen this very week as we release this with, former President Trump being indicted. That's a whole can of things that, could be the political divisions as far as that goes. And who knows, the COVID-19 of politics that we are unaware of that waits to be spread, shared, done, all those things. Like, I hope that I am overreacting about the omniscience of what I felt.
Omniscience.
Omniscience is that? No, that's all knowing. I felt like it was ominous, like
yeah, I don't think you are,
ominous.
though.
Okay.
I think if you look just from our perspective, look at the path that we're on, it's leading somewhere, let alone from a prophetic viewpoint. And I always think it's interesting as, President Monson and President Hinckley and others, as they get near the end, the things they choose to think about, to say in General Conference seems to focus.
Yep.
And not that they weren't focused before, but they don't know when they're ending, but they know that there's only 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 General Conferences left. We don't know,
Sure.
Or at least that's where they. And so, what do they choose to talk about? And if you go back and look at them, they're very poignant, and they lead into they lead perfectly, just like John the Baptist led towards Jesus Christ. The prophets are Eliases to each other, right? The one leads into the next, and it's amazing what President Nelson's focus has been lately, and this conference specifically.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, Richie, you asked on social media, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but you asked on social media for General Conference predictions, and things that people are hoping to hear. And one of the things that I commented was a takedown of political extremism. And so when President Nelson, but then it was funny because my uncle then commented on my post, and he's like, yeah, but people on the right are going to think you're talking about people on the left. People on the left are going to think you're talking about people on the right. But as soon as President Nelson started talking, I was like, oh, my prediction was right. He's taken us all down for our political extremism. But then as I was listening, I was like, oh, wait a second. He's literally talking to me. And the fact that I got so mad last week about this thing where I thought that I was being slighted. And I was like, I'm ready to cut off all of these people because they were being such da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I had a huge mental breakdown over it. I was like, oh, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's talking about the other stuff, but he's also saying, hey, Megan, get your crap together and stop being a jerk. That's 3 times.
In fact, he specifically mentioned learning not to take offense. Like,
exactly.
And I was like, oh, I sometimes just go right to the offense and don't give someone else the grace of having a bad day or having a different point of view, or maybe not even meaning anything that I'm taking. But often we expect them to, we will take that offense because I deserve better respect, as opposed to giving them the grace that I would want when I maybe make a statement that makes someone upset and not realizing it.
Yeah. If there was one thing that talk in particular left me wanting, was the how to do it. He talked about how Elder Oaks and Elder Eyring, who are separate individuals and have different thoughts and feelings, and they disagree, but they disagree civilly. I'm sure I would love to have that masterclass, whether it's in a 5th Sunday lesson, whether it's, we bring in professional people. Are there people that are able to have these conversations and say, Andrew just said something that made you really mad?
But I
How
think
can
he
you
did
react to what
give
Andrew
some
said?
specifics. I
Yeah.
think he did give some specifics, and he maybe not about that particular scenario, but he
Sure.
did say, he says, now is the time to lay aside our bitterness.
Sure.
Now is the time to cease insisting that it is your way or no way.
Sure.
Now is the time to stop doing things that make others walk on eggshells for fear of upsetting you. So he did give some very specifics, very strong specifics, and I think you got to bring that into it as well.
Yeah. Yep. I just want to know more how to do it. And I think we all need to. Megan the Mitch Mitchell, you'll get the last word, Mr. Mayor. You'll get the second to last word. I'll just say I appreciate everybody listening. Send us those things you've thought about at the beginning when we said, now you've forgotten about it. Contact at theculturalhall.com if you have a 12th birthday message, something that this means something to you, a suggestion that will make us thousands of dollars so I don't have to keep working other jobs. Or you're just that rich person that is like, I like this well enough. I'll throw some shekels that way. Contact at theculturalhall.com. That will be my final word. Mr. Mayor, what is yours?
My final word is I'm pleased to finally meet Meg the Mitch Mitchell in person, or at least over video, and I'm grateful that you're part of this group.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. My final word, if I can plug myself for a second, Richie, over at the Little Lessons podcast, all of this week, rather than releasing a single episode on Thursday, I am doing a mini episode every day this week following Holy Week, leading up to Easter.
Cool.
Palm Sunday and Holy Week is something that I've always wanted to learn a little bit more about. So tune in to the Little Lessons podcast for a short little 5 to 10 minute mini episode taking you through the Holy Week before the resurrection of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Very cool. Very cool. Happy Easter, everybody. That'll do it. Coming up in the third block, it's Corey K. Ward, the Pharaoh himself. We're talking about the 15 locations in which temples were announced. We'll talk about where they were, why they were, and what we're surprised. That's coming up in the third block of the Cultural Hall.